my Canadian gardeners, cold climate gardeners, and northern planters. How are you guys doing today? It is springtime and it's time to separate perennials. In this video, we're going to be going over the main types of perennials, exactly which ones are located in our zone in northern climate, but then we're also going to look at how to tell what type of perennial you have and best method to go about separating the perennials so you can still get beautiful blooms and vegetation this summer. So without further ado, let's get started. The first major type of perennial found here in Canada and northern climates is the clumping variety. The clumping variety is very commonly seen in hostas and perennial grasses. There are other variations as well. These generally can be identified in the spring by a few leaves on top, but no woody stem. When we dig the plant up, we may notice that it's just a clump of roots. It should look something similar to if you were to dig up your lawn. Best way to go about separating these is actually just to take a shovel, dig the entire plant out of the earth, and then go about separating that root clump into various different sections. The size of the section depends on what you want. The main objective is to get a portion of the green foliage combined with some of the roots. This can vary anywhere from an inch diameter to 2 feet in diameter. You're able to adjust this perennial to any shape and size that you please. The second commonly seen perennial here in Canada is the spreading perennial. These are commonly seen as creeping thyme or phyllox, sedums in some cases, but anything that generally says creeping behind it will be one of these perennials. The best way to identify these is woody, semi-woody stems on the surface of the soil with a root clump underneath. The woody stems you see on top in the summer will have roots coming out of it. I like to call them rooty stems. If you see that this is the case for this plant, the best method isn't necessarily digging the whole plant out, because what can end up happening is you'll end up having it all fall apart on you. Rather, pick out the amount that you want to separate, dig that out of the main plant, and then replant that portion somewhere else in your garden. The third type is the woody perennial. These are generally something like salvia and lavenders. These plants are most easily identified by their, what I like to call, crown. It should look like a crown of woody thorns. That is what a woody perennial is. These perennials have two different ways of dividing. If you notice that it has something called a sucker coming off of it, which is a plant that is growing outside of the main clump, you may want to just clip off that baby plant and replant that elsewhere in the garden. However, if the clump itself is getting too large, you can go in and separate it similar to what you would do with the clumping plant. So again, we would dig the entire plant out or dig out a portion of the plant, cut that out, and then replant it elsewhere in the garden. The important thing to remember is that we have some foliage and some roots. This can vary in size depending on the amount that you want to take from your mother plant, but any size will do as long as you have the foliage portion and the root portion combined. Bulbs. These are super popular here in Canada because they do really well in cold climates. Anything that has most of its energy stored underground generally does pretty good. Bulbs can be anything from prairie lilies to lily of the valley. It can be easily identified by almost a garlic looking bulb placed underneath the soil. These are really easy to divide. One bulb equals one plant. So if you have a bunch of plants in one area, I suggest you dig out a wide berth around it gently with a trowel, and then pick out however many bulbs you like from that batch and replant them elsewhere. Now, if you only plant one bulb or one plant, make sure you provide it some protection if you're going to leave it alone like a lone wolf. If you want them to do well and you don't want to have to stake it or protect it initially, then I suggest planting them in groups of 3 or 4. Tubers. Also very popular in Canada. They do really well because they hide underneath the soil level away from the cold. Tubers can be things like irises and peonies. Generally, it'll look something like a ginger root. Tubers are really easy to separate. All you do is simply take a spaded shovel and chop it wherever you desire and re-transplant it elsewhere. The important thing is you have a portion of root combined with a portion of vegetation. And the last one is taproots. Now, while I don't think you're going to try to divide these because it's mostly common sense, the taproot plants you're going to want to wait till you have a sapling before you go and just dig up. This would apply to things like trees and bushes, like the rhododendron tree or a lilac bush. For obvious reasons, you can't just go in and start chopping the plant up because it won't do very well. It doesn't have a dynamic root system. It kind of just comes out of one place, for lack of a better term. Now, the main thing to remember when you're transplanting or dividing any of your perennials is that you may have a shock factor after you transplant. That means after you transplant a portion of your perennial, you could have a die-off or a wilting of your plant. Don't worry, don't stress. Just continue to water as normal and to give it regular care. Don't just uproot it and chuck it out. Shock is normal when you start transplanting plants. This goes for annuals all the way to perennials. However, planting in the spring should alleviate these issues. You should not see shock if there's no foliage to shock. So get out there if you're in zone 3, 4, or 5. It's not too late. Start digging up your perennials using this video. If you guys enjoyed this video or you found it helpful, please be sure to like and subscribe and even share it. It helps me. I'm trying to build my YouTube channel, one of the only YouTube channels on YouTube that's dedicated to gardening in Canada. Yes, one of the only. How surprising is that? If you know of any Canadian YouTube channels that exist around gardening, please leave it in the comments below. Let's start some sort of a community where we can all get together and share each other's information. I hope you guys have a wonderful planting season this spring, wherever you may be, Canadian or not, and I will talk to you guys next time. And bye!